You really
You
do.
look great too, Tracy.
I really love your locks.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So,
She is amazing. God, I'm so thrilled and blessed to be here today. Wow. So exciting.
Recording in progress.
Official. Like he's giving us the musical interlude. Hey, this is Traci Harrell, and you are officially joining us for the Achieving Success in Business and in Life webinar series. And let me be clear, this is really a transformational experience. And today, what I'm excited to do is really have a conversation that we started over 3 years ago. We started talking about this Bigger Than Me success series. We talked about what it takes to be successful in business. We've also done a ton of work around inclusion. And so, as president of the National Black MBA Association Seattle chapter, part of what we do is really bring forward conversations that are about changing the status quo, helping you to be successful, but also creating a space where you understand what success means, right? And how can you achieve success despite all obstacles? And today in our conversation, we're actually going to introduce one of my new favorite people, Miss Melissa Brown. And our subject is achieving success in business and in life. That's our overall theme. And today we're talking about your success. And what we're saying is that your level of success, it actually depends on your level of service and your level of surrender. So again, I don't think I even said my name was Traci Harrell, but it is. And I'm also president of a nonprofit organization called It's All Bigger Than Me Ministry. Right. I'm a professional, so I also have a consulting company called It's All Bigger Than Me Consulting. But what's exciting about today is there's going to be a little bit of that concept of surrender to whatever that inner spirit, that higher power means to you. When things don't go your way, sometimes it is important to lean into something that's bigger than you. And so that's really what this conversation is going to be about today. So I'm going to have Miss Melissa Brown introduce herself and tell us, Melissa, when you think about this idea of success, tell us who you are and what does success mean to you?
Well, hello, Tracy. Hello to everyone who might be streaming in. It is definitely my pleasure and privilege to be with all of you here today. Tracy, I just thank you for the invitation. I'm glad we were able to sync our schedules and make this work. My name is Melissa Brown. I'm also known as the Soul Love Coach. And I am exactly as the name says, I am here to coach your soul to emotional wellness. I am here to help you to heal your inner wounds and to help you to reclaim your life. And so, by trade, I am a social worker by degree, been a social worker for more than 25 years, hailing from Morgan State University in Baltimore, as well as my master's at Ohio State, the Ohio State. But I'm also a minister, and I'm an ordained minister in the AME Church. And so my love, my joy is being able to blend the spiritual with the psychological. And I'm super excited to be able to bring that to the business space here today, because there's a lot of emotions when it comes to business. So to answer your question, though, Tracy, you asked me, what does success mean to me? And I've been thinking about that because, of course, there are so many different answers that I could give. But one of the things that I came up with is success is when your personal values align with your public persona. When
Mm.
your personal values are in alignment with your public persona, which basically means that who you appear to be is who you actually are. when who you appear to be is who you actually are. And it is when your goals go beyond just serving you, but it allows you to serve others. That's my definition of success. It's really about your alignment. It's really about being clear on why you're here on the planet, and those personal values show up in public.
I love it. I love it. Melissa, you and I had a conversation about the work and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. And I mentioned this concept of this success series, right? This bigger than me success series, this achieving success in business series. And I had a lot of information from individuals who came to me and said, Traci, we love this work, but we also love the work you were doing from an inclusion perspective. How do we blend the two? And part of my divine journey is blending this concept of what happens when you're doing all the things, all the right things that we know it takes to be successful in business, and things don't work out for you, right? You feel like there's a challenge as it relates to equity and inclusion in your organization or within a team that you're on, specifically with a particular leader. Who knows what that might be? But I've spoken to hundreds and thousands of actually individuals related to what I would consider soul wounds. And I know that's a word that you also leverage on a regular basis. And my definition of success, when I think about what success looks like, it's no matter what has happened in your life, right? You understand that it's part of the journey, right? And you're able to be joyful and maintain your divine purpose anyway.
Yes, yes. I think that that's so key. And you're right, Traci. I do a lot of personal and emotional work with women in particular, particularly women in leadership around their woundedness. And although I take it all the way down to the root, because no pain starts today, usually it has a path, it usually has a footprint that started a long time ago, and it just continues to play out in our adult lives. But I know in the workspace, just from everything we're seeing, especially with 2020 happening, there are so many of us who have been wounded in the workplace. And I have 4 core wounds that I identify: just the wound of rejection. You know, what happens when people don't want to take your ideas? What happens when someone else takes credit for your work? When
That
you
never
don't get the
That never happens.
oh, of course, never. You know, what happens when you don't get the promotion and the person you train does? Um, there's a level of woundedness that comes, but it's still the spirit of rejection, the sense of abandonment. What happens when you take a risk and your coworkers or your boss may leave you standing out there on your own, on a limb, and that feeling of abandonment of the people that I have given my gifts to, my time to, did not have my back. And you really do have to take intentional time to be able to, number one, even identify what the wound is.
Right.
Because so many of us, particularly as African Americans, we are just kind of known to just keep it moving. We have come to expect to be wounded. It's almost a part of the culture, but it's still toxic. It's still unhealthy. And so it is human when you are in pain, when you have been hurt, to take time out to, number one, let's look at where you have been hurt. Can you identify? And so I think over the last couple of years, the world has given us the opportunity, the invitation to give pause to the places that we are hurting. I'm not even going to go the political route, to give pause to the places where we as a country are hurting because of the lack of inclusion, because of the lack of diversity, because of all of the things that your organization is here to eradicate. And so, you know, you first have to be able to identify and recognize where that happens in you and your personal life and give attention to that.
What I love about this conversation, again, it's a continuation. So for most people who know, we're doing the next series of books and videos. So to make sure that this work is out there, that there's no question what success looks like. We have a blueprint for success. And one of the questions is, what happens when it doesn't quite work out? Y'all keep blowing up the chat. They're loving you. They're like, yes, it's on time. So keep blowing up the chat, y'all. We're going to actually create a space for you to come on board toward the end. So by all means, please continue to share, and we'll bring some of you in at the end. I wanted to do a couple of things. We have two male individuals. Show the fire real quick for me, John Chen, if you don't mind. Today we're here talking about, again, it's the next phase in the evolution of what we're calling a life-changing mastermind and action series. So it's not just about these masterminds. The definition of a mastermind is like we're bringing together information for you to digest. But really, success is not about hearing some information. Success is really about that activation. It's about the action, taking action. So as you all know, we have this series where the last Thursday of the month, we're hosting these mastermind sessions. And the first Tuesday of the month, we're hosting an action series. So Miss Melissa's coming back for anyone who has some wounds. And I know I've spoken to hundreds and thousands, actually. I've probably spoken to about 4,700 at the last count, individuals, right, with stories to tell about inclusion, about diversity, about their journey. And so we're going to help move that conversation forward, because in order to achieve success in business, we got to address some of the things, some of that energy that might not be serving us, so that we can move forward. We're also going to be doing work very actively to change the systems, right? We said that that's part of a promise kept, that we, as the National Black MBA Association, we said we were going to keep a promise, right? There's also an organization that reached out to me toward the end of last year. They were called WERE, W-E-R-E, Washington Employers for Racial Equity. And our former governor, Christine Gregoire, she's part of the Challenge Seattle and the Washington Roundtable. They have 80 organizations and leaders, at least 80. It was 80 last year, so it's more than that now. And they all committed to doing this work around inclusion. And what they said was, hey, we understand that there's some challenges when you're Black in America. Basically, they said, here's the research about being Black in Washington. And we know that Washingtonians, Black Washingtonians, no matter what your economic or socioeconomic or educational background is, you have a different lived experience. Well, oftentimes what we don't recognize is in corporate America, and I spent 25 years in corporate America, 8 years at IBM, both domestic and international, 14 years at the Disney company in senior leadership roles, and 5 years at Microsoft. And what I can tell you is those are three amazing organizations. Did I experience a level of leadership that was exceptional? I did. Did I also experience challenges with inclusion? Of course I did. Yes. But I also had leaders who were willing to and interested in having a conversation for change, to drive change. Now, I would say that we are actually all in a place where we can drive additional changes. So we have a clip that we're going to show from Mr. Lewis Rudd. And Lewis Rudd is the co-founder of Ezel's famous fried chicken. He's the number 2, the largest Black-owned enterprise of that nature in the country, made famous by Oprah Winfrey. She said this is her favorite chicken. So here's a conversation with Lewis Rudd when I asked him about this conversation around success and what does success look like. And here's what Lewis had to say about knowledge and power.
Well, 2 words come to mind: knowledge and power. Knowledge and power. And too often, those are not possessed by the same person, individual, or groups, right? And when I hear you speak about this group of people, this organization that really want to make a difference and add diversity and share the power, right? They have the power, but they have not the knowledge. So we need the other group to come together that has the knowledge. You know, there's a saying that when knowledge and power come together, man, there's a great birth of opportunities.
Yes.
Right. And so we have to hold our own selves accountable. There are people out there saying, yeah, I want to help. Well, let's not beat them up for what they didn't do last year, but let's hold them accountable for what they can do tomorrow.
Yes.
Right. Let's equip them with the knowledge. You know, it's in relationships. I need to tell you how I want to be treated, how I need to be loved. I can't expect you to come into the relationship knowing that. And so it's the same thing here. We have to organize the people with the knowledge to communicate with the people with the power who have committed to saying, okay, we want to make a difference. We want to share the wealth. We want to share the power. We want to share the resources. But we just don't know how and who, where and what. Well, let's answer those 5 W's for them.
Yes.
Let's tell them why they should do it, who they should do it with, what they should do it to, why, where, let's give it all to them.
Yes.
And let's bridge that gap of prosperity.
Yes. Yes.
And wealth by, again, there was a time when that group was not really interested.
Right.
They had other things that were more important to them, that this topic was at the very bottom of their priority list. But now that they've, become aware to a level that they want to understand, let's help them understand how to help us or help minorities.
Don't you love that? Don't you love everything about that? Let's hold them accountable lovingly, hold them accountable, right? And to share, to teach, to clarify what it takes, what success looks like for us. What did you think when you heard that video, Ms. Melissa?
Well, it definitely made me think about what I say so often in the counseling and coaching space, which is, have you had a conversation? Because so often we are wounded and there's absolutely zero conversation about what happened, the who, what, when, and where, the information. And so, as he was speaking, like you said, there generally is a group of people who have information. Then there's another group that have the power to actually make the changes. And the two have to come together. We have to look at the workplace as relational, not transactional. It is a relationship. And, and I do recognize that takes the leadership to be able to see its employees as people and not just paper, just here pushing paper and trying to make more money and do all of that. And really what that becomes is a devaluing of us as people. And many of us, especially in our community, if you're already feeling devalued, if you're already feeling a Ralph Ellison, like Invisible Man, the Invisible Woman, how then what is the conversation to be seen? So that you see me for who I am and I don't feel used in the workspace. And change is more than just something to be said for lip service, because, over the last couple of years with all of the racial unrest and everything, there's been a lot of lip service. There's been a lot of money and, we have to fix this, but you can't fix anything without a conversation.
I love it. I love that so much. And again, today really is about having a different level of conversation. But I always say, we started this last year, it's like we're moving beyond courageous conversations to courageous activations. Like,
yes.
To truly activate. Conversations are great, but if we're not taking the actions to support what we're saying, then that in itself is a whole different level of challenge, right?
And here's the thing, Tracy, just like in personal relationships, as the speaker was saying, you have to teach people how to treat you. So we often assume that people know what to do. It's not enough to just say, you wounded me, you hurt me, I felt dismissed by you, because people don't know what they don't know. And, I think a lot of times we look at life, we look at people through our lens. And I've been guilty of that. We are so quick to say, well, I wouldn't have done that. Well, they're not you.
Right.
And you don't know that person's story. You don't know that person's background. You don't know how they have been trained. And so people do what they do until they have been taught and told, sometimes it's told, to do something different when it comes to how they relate to you. And so I think we have to take it further. I love what you said, the not just a courageous conversation, but courageous activation, which involves being able to say, what is the specific action that needs to be taken in this space? How does this not happen again? If I'm feeling dismissed, if I'm feeling not heard, if I'm feeling overlooked, what is the action that needs to happen so so we can eliminate the wound and the problem, and you're not continuing to wound me, but you said, okay, we're gonna work on it. How are we working on it? You don't know how.
So let me just say to people, and I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of communications from individuals talking about this journey, like the journey that we're on right now. And they basically say the same thing. They're kind of having conversations. Thank you, John. I asked John to pull up this flyer because I wanted to clarify the names of the individuals. So we have Joe Handy, who's president of the National Black MBA Association. We have Lewis Rudd, again, co-founder of Ezel's Chicken. There's some other faces I want to bring on as well. So thank you, John. You can go ahead and take that flyer down. I wanted to really talk to and talk to individuals that are joining us today. One such individual is Bernard Walker, and I'm also inviting Rachel Green. She's going to be joining us a little bit later on. But this conversation around teaching people how to treat you is critical. So Bernard's had experience in corporate America as well, but he's the founding president of the Seattle chapter, the Seattle Portland chapter at the time. I'm the current president of the Seattle chapter of the National Black MBA Association. And I asked Bernard to join us for a couple of reasons, partially because we're saying success, right, depends on your level of service and your level of surrender. And Bernard, you've been a man who served your community in this space around National Black MBA Association. You understand the importance of us doing this work in community, as community. Tell me a little bit more about that and why that was so important. Tell us a little again who you are, but why, tell us about surrender, success, and service.
Okay. Well, thank you, Traci, for inviting me. So I've had a long history of service in the community. As was stated by Melissa and other speakers in the past, I mean, we have come to participate in America by inches, right? By ebbs and flows, because we were excluded from the very beginning. And we had to shoulder in, so to speak, to establish a place for us. So I think that's very important. And our conditioning has, in some ways, supported our own disenfranchisement, right? Carter G. Woodson, in his phenomenal work, The Miseducation of the Negro, talks about that when a person is conditioned in such a way, you don't have to tell them to go to the back door. They've been trained to go to the back door. And so it is as an urban planner, I have a dual master's, a master's in business operations and technology management, and then urban and regional planning. And in urban planning, it talks about the reproduction of social relations, right? Which is also a part of the reproduction of power relations. Yes. So at a particular point, we can fall into a culture of helplessness and hopelessness, right? So a part of our getting our just outcomes and results also requires for us to recondition our own thinking to more of a growth mindset, so that we continually ask for what we want and learn new tools of influencing behavior and demonstrating our own leadership ability.
I love that. I love that so much. Dr. Melissa, she's Melissa Brown is nodding her head. What you got to say, Sister Brown? She's like,
that was so good. Oh my gosh. Everything you said, I'm sitting over here and just amening it because the conditioning is real. And, you know, again, even though most of the work I do is more in the one-on-one, And I tell my community all the time that we have a very interesting relationship with pain and suffering. And sometimes you can be so used to suffering, so used to being disappointed that you really don't expect anything else. And so although it's only one area that you have been wounded, we can paint with such a broad brush and say all of corporate America is this. All of, if you work for the city, it's this. And you really have to be able to stop yourself and say, is that really true? Is it really true that we have not made strides, that we have not, that everything is against you? Just to really be conscious even of your language and the way you tell a story. Because when you have been wounded, we have a way sometimes of layering up the story. You know how we do even in families, that it is something that happened 5 years ago, but by the time we get to 10 years, it's like, and the story has gotten so blown up that it's like, girl, that's not what happened at all. And so we have to be careful, even in those professional spaces where people did not treat us well, they mishandled us and may not have known what to do to correct themselves, or it may have happened repeatedly. But you are so much more than what has happened. Who you are is not your condition. It's not where you've been. Microsoft doesn't hold the key to Traci's destiny. And so you really have to be able to clear that out. And there are lots of ways, to be able to release, to be able to surrender. Traci and I, we've been talking about that because life is not always going to stay the same. And so we have choices to make about whether or not we're going to continue to kind of run ourselves up against the brick wall because I want it to be the way it was, or I have an idea or a picture in my head about this is how it's supposed to go, but life ain't flowing like that. And so are you willing to surrender to another possibility?
Did you hear that? Surrendering to another possibility. I love that. When I was having this conversation with Louis Rudd, he went on to say a little bit about this, I call it a little bit about promises kept. We have a video that we're going to show, John. Let me know when you're ready. But we really want to bring forward this idea of we do get to decide how to drive success. We decide what success looks like. To get into me, what success looks like is we're all collectively part of driving change. Let's see what Louis Rudd had to say.
I have to help you to help me, right? And I can't get mad at you when you continually do what you've always done, and I expect you to do something different, right? I have to maintain a level of confidence that if we work together, we can create change, right? And not drive you further away or back into your old ways because I'm frustrated, right? So when those people that are within those organizations that have made those commitments become elusive, it's not intentional that, oh, shoot, here she's calling me again. No, it's just that they're going on about living their lives the way they've always done. I said something early on that's true right now. Habits are hard to break, right? You want me to change a way that I've been for decades and start acting a way, in some ways differently today, then you have to help me with that. You can't get mad at me because now you give me an excuse,
right,
to not deal with you at all.
Yes.
Right? Because of how you're treating me. Again, relationships become resources, but you have to work on those relationships. It's just like a marriage, right? It's just like in the household with the kids. You can't beat them down every time they don't do what you expect them to do. You can't beat your spouse every time she doesn't fix or he doesn't do, right? You have to come up with, how can I bridge the gap between the knowledge and the power? It goes back to that. And I think if we can get the right people in the positions and say, okay, you said it's okay for me to call you. Well, I'm going to keep calling you until you answer me. And if you're not available, can you assign someone? So if it's the president of this big corporation that we're trying to get to, no. I don't want to call you, Mr. President. Give me the number to your executive assistant so I can call that person who can get to you and get the message and keep the communication channels open. But if frustration enters into the communication, it generally dissolves. Yeah. So let's keep the frustration out of the communication. I don't want you frustrated, and I don't want to be frustrated.
I love that. don't you love it when, what do you got to say, Bernard?
Yeah, no, he made excellent points. And actually, I have sitting in front of me, one of the books that I love to use is Jack Canfield's The Power of Focus. And one of the lines in there is that your habits will determine your future. And so when he talks about habits, right, we often, not just often, we as human beings, we learn habits from past experience. And then quite often it becomes an unconscious habit. Yeah. So we may be dealing with people who have unconscious habits that have helped them to achieve in life while they're have been excluding others, right? And have not developed those skills to really communicate inclusively, respectfully, right? And so instead of, as they say, getting all historical, remembering the past wounds, as Sister Melissa has mentioned, that we identify what are the goals, right, that we want to achieve. And an easy way to use it is to use the term GREAT, G-R-E-A-T. What are our goals we want to achieve? What is the role that we need to operate from? What are the expectations that we need to articulate, right? What is the attitude that we need to have, such as a positive mental attitude? And what are the tools that we're going to use to achieve our goals? And as he's mentioned, how do we create these relationships with people who have not necessarily been open for those relationships? And how do we clearly articulate the vision of this new state, right? Now that we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, instead of rehearsing the wounds and the wrongs that have been done in the past, we need to walk through the door. And I want to make one other point of an example of a person who was wounded. So as you mentioned, I'm the founding president of the Seattle Portland chapter. But when I moved with my HP down to the Bay Area, things happened and I became the chapter president of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. And we had an event with the Gap, which included the Navy, Banana Republic, had 200 members there. The executive officers of the Gap were quite happy with the event. And at the end of the event, as we were beginning to have refreshments, one sister walked up to me and she says, "Wow, this was really a great event. Wow, and I would join the Black MBA Association. But you know how we are. We're like crabs in the bucket." I said, no. We just had a successful event. And you are getting ready to, bring up a belief about how we are, which is a negative mindset, habit, right? So please do not project some of these negative behaviors on an organization that has manifested a good event and has provided you an opportunity to engage. But instead of walking through the door, you want to say, because of how they are, or because some beliefs that you've established on us, you now want to give yourself permission to stay stuck.
Yes.
I love that so much. And that's really why the work that we've been leading here is so transformational, because we do have such a large group of individuals who want to be a part of real change. Not only they know what change looks like we're demonstrating it on a regular basis. What I love also about my people is they don't let me shortcut anything, right? So I was planning to do, I'm also a certified success coach with Success Magazine, because I wanted to make sure I kind of layered on, some additional confirmation on like what success looks like. I've been doing this work around D&I. So I did D&I training to Cornell University. Once again, just adding on to the thing. And so I was going to do success training separate from D&I training. And the Lord and people who reached out to me was like, oh, I love this stuff, but how can you disconnect the two? Like, what makes you so unique is that you know how to bring the two things together. And so really, I have to have conversations about what it means to achieve success in business while we bring in this conversation about inclusion. We have a very unique perspective and unique opportunity today to say, hey, even when you do all the things, that's what Rachel likes to talk about, when you do all the things that they say it is designed for you to be successful, if you're in a space where we haven't laid out clearly what inclusion looks like, then we have failed. And so about 3 years ago, we did some work with the National Black MBA Association. It was a national think tank. It was really around how do we increase the number of Black leaders in executive and leadership roles? How do we do that work? And we had all the answers. We knew exactly what to do, how to do it. And we still weren't doing it. Like you said, we went back to our separate corners and stopped doing it. And God put it on my heart at that moment to say, move, this is bigger than you. Like, move forward. And that's a choice that I had to make. And I'm grateful that I was able to step into that. And so one of the individuals I'm going to show a video from is Joe Handy. Joe Handy is the president of the National Organization of Black MBA. And when we were talking about this particular initiative, and we talk about achieving success in business and in life, and we talked about your level of success is really dependent on your level of service and your level of surrender. And I asked Joe about this concept of service. Here's what he had to say about mentorship. And actually, there's another person I'm going to bring on too in a second. When we finish with Joe, we're going to bring on Dr. Melissa Commodore. So let's hear what Joe had to say about mentorship and service.
Yes. So I would say that mentorship in many cases is timely, is situational. I also believe not only in mentoring, but coaching. But if we speak specifically to mentorship, it is our role to, one, teach those folks that what we have learned and what we've discovered. And one thing, me personally, which I've discovered is I typically look for someone that was older to be a mentor. But I have soon realized that folks that I have mentored in the past, I am their mentee. So I look to the youth to help me understand what is resonating, what is timely today, so that I can also shape the way I lead, because we're leading generations that may not necessarily be older than us, but they may be younger than us. So it's important for us to not only take the state of being mentors to others, but also approach it in a way that we can be mentored by some of the folks that we're looking to lead.
I love that. I love that so much. And, the beautiful thing about this is we each get to serve. What did MLK say? Everybody can be great because everyone can serve. And service can be as simple as being a mentor. It's showing up. I'm very excited. As you guys know, I wrote in 3 books that became international bestsellers. I happen to have them right here. The first book is actually called Ignite Happiness. And I tell the story of when I left Microsoft. Right? The second book is called Ignite Your Inner Spirit. And the third book is called Ignite Possibilities. And what really gets me excited about it, the fourth book is actually that I contributed to, is actually launching right now. We have a signing on Saturday. And I wrote in it this concept of transformational inclusive leadership. And when I say that, God gave me some clarity around what it takes to actually drive change. I've been doing the work for 25 years in corporate America. But you got to kind of be brave to stand up and say, when your organization says we're not ready for change, and you're like, I'm not ready for you not to change. Right? There's some courage that comes with that. So we actually have laid out some of the parameters about what it takes to be successful. And it does impact all aspects of our society. There's some individuals, if you want to join us from the audience and join us live here, let me know. But Dr. Melissa, I'm going to bring you on and ask you to join us. I know one of the topics you and I have discussed in the past is this idea of toxic leadership and knowing when to walk away. Melissa had some comments about that idea as well. And again, we know that you can do all the right things and you can be in a space where your success is being limited based on your situation. So let's talk a little bit about your story.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to all of you. All of your wisdom is right on time. Thank you to Miss Melissa Brown. Beautiful name. They kept saying Melissa, and I'm like, but it kept throwing me. Like, you did, but it kept throwing me. So I wrote your information down, Melissa Brown. I thank you. You know, I was in a situation just recently, so I pray I don't get emotional, but I had to learn to stand up and walk away. And when I say stand up, I mean you stand up for yourself. Everyone was mentioning, have you had conversation? That came up. Have you had conversation? Make sure it's not all up here, because trauma can get you to think everybody's like that. And so one thing that I did was, because I know that, and I've been in corporate America, right? And in Washington State, and Lord, I experienced the worst of the worst. I experienced the best of the best. And so I had to step back and say, okay, let me look at myself. Let me make sure that I'm not bringing any baggage. Am I seeing things? Am I assuming too much? And after I did that, I was able to step back, and then I could see clearly, and I saw the constant type attitude, behavior consistently still going on. So I was like, okay, so it's not me. I'm not crazy, you know. And I had to stand up, have those conversations, but unfortunately, they did not want to have those conversations. And the people that could do something about it. So what happens when the people that can do something about it, you reach out to them, but there's this friendship that they have, this loyalty that they have to toxic relationships and toxic people, to where you can't get those conversations. So at that point, when you assess the situation, took yourself out of it, make sure it's not me, make sure it's not that trauma speaking, make sure I'm not doing a generalization, and then me trying to tell them how to treat me, this is how you need to treat me, right? And trying to have those conversations, and everything has been done, but it's been blocked. When do you walk away? So my blood pressure went in for my hand, and my blood pressure, he took my blood pressure twice, and the nurse looked at me, and the doctor said, how are you doing? And on that, I just bawled. And he was just like, your blood pressure is too high. I'm fit. I work out. I eat right. And so it's like, got to get rid of that stuff. Toxic people, toxic things. And so I had to make a health decision. Do I want to add 30, 40 more years to my life? Or do I want to take 30 or 40 more years away from my life by staying here, digging my heel in and fighting? I fought, so I'm 6 feet under. So I decided to, at that point, when it was affecting my health, affecting my personal life, when I'm bent over the stomach in pain, over the toilet in pain, it's time to stand up. I stood up, I did what I needed to do, and I walked away. And it's okay. And it could be a big paying job, and people think you're crazy. No, I'm smart. What's crazy for me to stay there?
I love that. And fortunately, we got the right one on the call today, because Melissa Brown, one of the things she does is she helps us. Once you've had those experiences, you also got to kind of, you got to express it out of your system, right? You got to make sure there's some work we're going to do next Tuesday. Hopefully you'll join us. And we're going to go through some exercises, because all of us have had some situations, right? We've all had some situations that we haven't actually, I've done some very intentional forgiveness work, which allows me to step up in love. But Melissa, if someone like Melissa, let me clarify. Melissa Brown is someone like Dr. Melissa Commodore came to you and expressed what she just expressed. This is a relatively recent wound, right? And not the first time she's felt wounded. What would you say to her? And she's breaking out the notepad because she's doing some work.
Well, and here's what I would actually say, Dr. Melissa. It would be nothing for you to write down, because before we go into the cognitive, the wounds are from the neck down. And so I would just, as your sister, say, I am so sorry you had that experience. If no one else at that organization was able to say to you, you deserved more, you were worthy of a conversation, that you mattered, that the work you did, your contribution mattered, let me say to you, you matter.
Yes, you are loved here.
And
That's
I
what
would
this is
also
about.
say, I'm so proud of you for choosing you. Because so often, you're right, it's so easy not to. You know, when we hear the stories,
Yeah.
you know, we're always so quick to say, I would leave that. I wouldn't put up with that. But, you know, you don't know what you would do until you're in it. And the paycheck every 2 weeks is very seductive and attractive. The golden handcuffs can be really golden. And when you have a mortgage and we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and you have, depending on your home situation, whether you got kids in college or you have responsibilities. And so it's easy to say, I would just leave. But the level of courage and the level of love that it takes to be able to say, God, I believe there has to be more. And to trust in the abundance that this is not the only place, and that this is not my supply, this is not my resource, God is. And to just really see, because it's going to take some time when we're so quick to kind of like, well, what's next? And like I said, we are not meant to just have things piled up on us. And it's really important, you know, Dr. Melissa, you said it correct, we assess ourselves, we're able to be insightful and reflective and able to say, okay, was this me? Was this? Or was, you know, and just because we understand that an environment or even a person is toxic doesn't make it hurt less, whatever it is they acted out or projected onto us. And I think we owe it to ourselves to give ourselves time to grieve. There's already so many things, you know, all the little microaggressions that, you know, on a daily basis, you got to come home and kind of detox and have a mental shift to be able to know your worth in your home so that you're not, you know, going off or snapping at people because somebody else disrespected you in the workspace and there was no place for you to say that hurt. And so it takes time, but I just want to say, I'm so proud of you for choosing you. Because a lot of us stay too long.
I love that. I love that so much. Dr. Melissa, you know you are loved. You see the chat, people are saying, we're so proud of you. Because the other thing that happens in corporate America, when these things, I mean, think about it, culturally, we've been wounded as a people. We haven't dealt with the cultural wounds, right? And then we go into corporate America dealing with wounds that no one even wants to address. Because like she said, you're getting paid, you know, right? We talk about it, but there's so much we can talk about. The book is going to be incredible. But there's so many things that we've talked about. But this idea of us sharing and telling our stories, right? Being able to be vulnerable, lovingly, open, that's really how you get to the next level. So when this session was about achieving success in business and in life, your level of success absolutely depends on your level of service and your level of surrender. So you're serving the rest of us just by showing up, by being who you are. Thank you for serving us. And you're also surrendering because you know that you're part of a greater purpose in life.
And just to say something else, Traci, about surrender, and I think, you know, you demonstrated it, Dr. Melissa, you really have to be able to look at, is this my fight? And you have to be able to ask yourself, is it worth the fight? And everything is not your assignment. Because, you know, depending on our personalities and our dispositions, sometimes, you know, it's appropriate to be power to the people. And then there are other times that it's really more strategic for you to walk away and preserve yourself, to preserve your gift. And, you know, sometimes we have to create our own tables. We have to create our own rooms, our own spaces, as opposed to trying to keep going up against the brick wall and having negative experiences that don't serve us. And, you know, Traci, you said it as well. Every employer is not ready to shift. And so it's a personal decision that for me, I bathe in prayer of, okay, am I being placed here as light in dark places? Or is this my cue to exit stage left?
And guys, it's a hard conversation to have. It really is. And so part of the work we're doing, we talked about this organization called WERE, WERE, right? Washington Employees for Racial Equity. It's about all employers, right? At the end of the day, they're focused on inclusion. They say they're ready to move forward. They say that they want to drive change. We're going to help them. We're going to do exactly what Louis Rudd said. We're going to lay out a clear path. This is what that looks like for us. This is what that looks like for us. And because companies who say one thing and do something different, I call that corporate catfishing, right? You can't just say X, Y, Z and then say, well, we're really not ready to do all the things. Because like you said, Melissa, what do you do differently to change the status quo? What do you do differently? It can't be just saying a thing. It can't be hiring more of us. Like when one company that I work for actually said they were going to be hiring 50% more diverse individuals. And I was like, no, please don't. Not unless you're willing to actually do the work to create that inclusive culture, to really change the status quo. Unless you're willing to do the work, you're kind of setting people up for, again, more of the same potentially. And not that it's a bad place, not at all. But basically, if you're not ready to truly drive change, you're not caring for those people who are literally assigned to your care. Another one of my favorite people just joined, Dr. James Smith. I think you wanted to add to the conversation, Dr. James. What specifically got you excited about this conversation today?
Hello, everybody. What got me excited was the fact that what currently exists versus what didn't exist in the past. And coming through the corporate world at a time when I came through the corporate world, these kind of conversations did not take place. These kind of support systems did not exist. And I sit and I listened to both Dr. Melissa Brown and Dr. Melissa Commodore, and also Louis Rudd and Bernard. And the conversation that inspired me on to take a position of what we have today. We need to really appreciate what we have today versus what existed in prior years. When I came through the corporate world and entered the corporate world back in the late 60s, we didn't have these kind of support systems. And a lot of those things that Dr. Melissa Commodore went through, we didn't have anybody to have this, be able to sit back and have those kind of conversations or to act as mentors for us. And that's why it inspired us all to become mentors as we progress during our corporate careers. So I just wanted to add the fact that hey, we need to really appreciate what we have today with the National MBA Association and the work that's being done and the people that are a part of the organization that didn't exist back in those days. Because I tell you what, folks, we're going to continue to have to deal with the corporate structure and have to deal with some of the narrow-mindedness that unfortunately still exists from the old boy networks that exist in those corporate structures. Some of the things that really hit me real hard. And I'm going to teach a class on the 11th at Western Washington University to a bunch of teachers in the teacher prep program that revolve around cultural competency and DEI. And one of the things that hit me really hard in the conversation and I made a note of it, was that it's all about moving beyond courageous conversations to courageous activation. And that is so true with everything that we need to do. And when we talk about cultural competency and DEI, we have to move beyond the conversation, courageous conversation revolving around that, and focus on courageous activation and how it impacts the people that we're going to have influence on their lives as we continue to move forward. So I just wanted to join the conversation and say, hey, all this conversation that we're having is right on. Dr. Melissa Commodore, be assured that there are people out there who are in your corner and supporting you. And there are people like you that, and like all of us that exist in the current corporate world. And we have to be there for them as mentors. And we have to understand that what they're going through is, quite frankly, no different than what we went through 20 years and 30 years ago but we have a system and we have an organization in place now to help us trade through travel through those waves and those waters and everything else, and be successful as we continue to move forward. Just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thank you. And Dr. James Smith happens to be, how do I use the right language? I'm not going to say the oldest member, but one of the longest standing members of the National Black MBA Association. It's part of the Seattle chapter. So when did you join?
1993, and I was really active for a long time until I started working on my PhD, and then I kind of moved over to the doctoral side of the ledger. And now that I've retired from the corporate world and I'm involved in education consulting and serving on several state level committees and boards, and as an advisor for City University, PAB, and also as an advisor to the University of Washington president, or personal committee of community of color advisors. I've got active again back in the National MBA.
And also an advisor for the National Black MBA Association. Thank you, Seattle chapter, as well as he's part of the organization that has actually helped to facilitate these conversations, the Black Education Strategy Roundtable. And what's really exciting about that is the Black Education Strategy Roundtable leans to the work that we're doing. Bring on Bernard again, because I know Bernard knows a little bit about the Leaders of Tomorrow program, which is part of the National Black MBA Association. So we're doing this work not for ourselves, right? It does matter to those of us who are in corporate America today, but we're also committed to driving change for our youth, for our leaders of tomorrow, for really making sure, like honestly, full disclosure, book number 1, Ignite Happiness, was written simply because a young Black girl sat across from me at Microsoft. And she basically said she wanted to commit suicide because of the experience she was having. Now, you know, God was like, girl, Traci, activate. Wonder Twin powers, activate. I was right. Listen, right? That was part of my responsibility. At that point, we are all responsible for each other. And there was no question in my mind that I was put in that place. She came to me because I was president of Black MBA. She came to me because I was part of the Blacks at Microsoft leadership team. She came to me because I was part of the Women in Operations leadership. And she saw me leading some things, right? So as leaders, whether you're leading yourself, people are watching, right? They're watching how you show up, right? We are responsible for each other. So for me, this is work. This is life or death work, right? Like when I drop the mic, I want God to say, well done. That's my only intention. Right. So FYI, each of us have a responsibility, I think, for each other and for this community. And there are specific things that we know about to truly drive change. Dr. Melissa, anything you want to share with, say, anyone who's suffering? I'm reading the chat right now and people are saying, right on, right? I had to leave because of X, Y, and Z. What if you were looking forward to what we were going to do on Tuesday, looking forward into some of the work that you do? Tell us a little about the work that you do, and then how we're going to help people to move through that next level of release, that next level of success.
Well, as I was sharing with Dr. Melissa and with all of you earlier, you know, I think you first, before you can move on from anything, you got to be willing to identify, because you can't heal what you have not identified. And I think it's important to be specific in the thing. So if we say, you know, oh, I just felt disrespected. Oh, I just felt taken advantage of. How? To begin to tell the story first to yourself, to be able to whether you write that down in a journal, to be able to kind of record it for yourself, because all of us at a core level, we just want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to know that we matter. And so when you give that time first to yourself, as opposed to just getting busy, because, you know, we are a culture, that's a whole nother show, but we are a culture who numbs pain. And particularly for African American women, we just, you know, take a licking and keep on ticking. And we just keep it moving and we keep it going. And it's almost like our wounds can easily become a badge of honor, when really it's making us sick. You know, as Dr. Melissa said, your blood pressure, the migraine headaches, the sleepless nights, the issues with fertility, all kinds of things that people are carrying that are stress related. And one other thing you said, Traci, that I wanted to go back to, like thinking about the assignment that you just happened to be sitting across from someone who was in distress. It's not an accident. It's a reason why God has planted you wherever you have been planted. Even though it may not be what you wanted, and that's that whole notion of surrender again. Can you surrender to something bigger than you, to something larger than you? Because you have no idea. You're just one piece of the puzzle. And to be able, us in ourselves, in our own community, to be inclusive. Because what if you had looked across your desk and said, oh, these young people, oh, they don't have coping skills. And, you know, we really have to be honest with ourselves because relationships are a mirror. So a lot of what we experiencing is just reflective of what we do within ourselves. And, you know, even as Bernard had said earlier, you know, look how easily we can mislabel ourselves. Even though we have a great event, even though, you know, you have the Black MBA, you have all of these resources now that were not available before. Are we leaning in, or do we have all these hidden rules and stories that keep us out and keep us on the margins? When the goal we're saying is to be inclusive, it has to start at home.
I love that. So we're going to also share a video from Joe Handy that was on the topic of balance. And what I asked him, and Melissa, you and I had this conversation earlier, but what I asked him was about this idea of truly, what does success look like when it comes to this idea of balance? So John's going to help us to see what Joe had to say on the topic. What do you say when someone talks to you about balance, Melissa Brown?
Well, Traci, I think those are two separate questions. The balance that I speak about is mainly the balance between mental health and ensuring that as we continue to work hard in our careers, that we work equally as hard in our personal life to ensure that we don't get consumed by the everyday hustle. So the balance that I typically speak about is mainly around being able to work hard, but also focus on your personal growth and your mental health, because in our community, that is something that's seldom focused on. And in particular with Black men, many times we look at having the responsibility of sort of supporting our family and supporting our community, and sometimes we don't have an outlet. And the same is true for Black women, having all of the roles and responsibility of being the provider for within the home, being the leader within the home, and still having to go out and work hard in a society that looks at them through a particular lens. So we have to make sure we're understanding that balance. Now, as it relates to the National Black MBA Association, we are having this holistic approach. We want to provide wraparound services for our entire community. We want to ensure that we're helping our students get in front of brands that are speaking to them, that are meeting them where they are, so that as they're establishing their brand loyalty, they're establishing their brand loyalty with brands that have helped them and have been in the trenches with them along the way. As it relates to our sort of goal key and our seasoned executives, we want to make sure that we are providing those continuing education webinars that allows for them to continue to be a contributor within their organization, and also gives them an opportunity to pivot if life so chooses them to make an adjustment within their career path. They now have acquired a lot of skills and knowledge and become subject matter experts, and we want to make sure that we're putting them in a position that will best utilize their skills and talents. And as it relates to our entrepreneurs, we know that 90% of Black businesses are sole proprietors, in the sense that they're individual contributors to an organization. They may be accountants, they may be seamsters, they may be a situation where they're the only employee. And we want to be able to provide those services that allow for them to grow and scale their business so that they can hire more people. And we know that small businesses also is the heartbeat of America. So National Black MBA Association is positioning itself to be that voice and be that community to provide wraparound services for all those different endeavors. And that's why we have that secret sauce. That's why being a member of National Black MBA Association is so important, not only for the impact that we have, but the echoing impact that it has within our community. So my sort of shameless plug is come on in, the water's fine, be a part of National Black MBA Association and see how the world opens up.
I love it. Don't you love my people? So we're going to do some closing comments real quick. If you can bring Bernard Walker back on, and Dr. James, let us know if you would like to join us. Looks like he's saying yes. What's exciting about this for me is that this is an initiative. If there's anyone else in the chat, there was over 100 people who registered for this in just a few days. So I got really excited about that. So this is a topic that we really will continue. So again, our next action and accountability session will be specifically focused on what we can do, what each of us can do to move forward in our personal transformations. What can we do to truly create success in our lives and success for our communities, success for the next generation? We can't be the ones. Dr. James, you just said that you've been talking about this since you've been having these same conversations.
Yeah, it's 1992. You have to really
for decades.
Really keep saying that, Tracy. I'm here. I've recommitted and I'm moving forward. I just got to say that, hey, I really appreciate what Joe Handy had to say. It is really critical for all of us that as we continue to move forward in our careers and everything else, that we find that right balance. Because if we don't find that balance, we're going to really burn ourselves out one way or the other. And I think that is really critical for us to take into consideration. The other thing is, I really appreciate what the organization itself is standing for at this particular point. Because like I said earlier, that this was missing in the past, and it is something that is really critical for us to continue to move forward in the future, to understand and recognize that we have a strong force behind us all. And it's like, if we ever get to that point where we need to kind of support, it's there, it's available, and it's just a matter of identifying which way we want to go to solicit additional support and help. And Dr. Melissa Commodore, understand that there's people out there who are willing to listen to what you have to say and support you, as well as each and every one of us. And, I look at it and say, hey, I had a fantastic corporate career where I rose up to the level of assistant vice president. And Tracy and I have had several conversations about that. And when I decided to ultimately retire after 34 years in the corporate world, I decided that I was going to devote myself to making an impact and making a difference for our community and for our Black community and our Black kids. And we've used that termination of unapologetically focused and committed to those kind of things. I stand strongly behind that. And everything I'm doing now is from an educational standpoint. And the interesting thing about this, even though I got my MBA in Business Administration, Leadership, and Strategic Planning, I got my PhD in Leadership and Strategic Planning. But even with those degrees, when I retired, I decided to go back to grad school and get my teacher credentials. So I am a certified KA teacher, and I'm also an adjunct. I have been an adjunct teaching 4 years in the Master of Ed program at CityU, because I wanted to make sure that those things that I learned over the years are carried forward and shared, and that we make a better society and a better education system that we currently have. And that focus continues to be on our kids and our community who unfortunately are marginalized, underserved, and everything. And I want to make sure that they have a voice on everything dealing with education in the future. So
I love it. And Dr. James, what I wanted to add as well, our session in May, our mastermind sessions in May will be live from Rainier Valley Leadership Academy. It's an all-Black charter school, mostly Black. I think it's 90% Black. Charter school that's in Seattle, and I'm super excited about that. So we're bringing this conversation to our youth. It's going to be part of ongoing work that we do to make sure teachers, administrators, within our community, we're bringing the community into that space. We want our eyes on the space where our youth are, so that they understand we're having these conversations not just for us, but for our youth. So I'm excited. Black Education Strategy Roundtable. That's the catalyst. That's actually what allowed us to do this work. And so I'm super excited and blessed and grateful for that.
Hey, I'm on the board for the BESR,
Of
and was
course, I know you're on the board, and
and
that's
one of,
great.
and one of the ones that got that organization helped started. So right, all this stuff is, it's enjoying, and I think one of the things that I hope we always take in consideration is to eliminate silos. Too often we have we tend to operate in silos without understanding the interaction that takes place between those silos and the interconnectivity and and the things that are impacted in each one of those silos. So those are some things we just need to keep, on our radar.
I love it.
Thank you.
Steve Smith assigned to me through the Black Education Strategy Roundtable as a part of the Black Student Report Card is really how do we elevate the voices of our youth? How do we make sure they see themselves as the amazing individuals that they are? And that's really part of the work that we're doing is really creating a pipeline, right? And clarity. We're creating videos. We're creating a space where their voices are heard and they see their own greatness and what we show and reflect to them. So I'm excited about that. More to come. You guys are going to be highly featured in the May session because we're going to be around students. We're going to be in a space where they see and understand who you are, what we're doing, and why this work is the right work to do. Bernard, I think we need to have you unmute. Share any final words as we close. I'm going to go to Dr. Melissa, then I'm going to have
Yes.
Melissa Brown close us out.
Okay, so I think as we talk about this subject, one item that I never have shared is that so my mother was at a supervisory role in Pacific Telephone Company or Pac Bell, right? Some of the younger people may not even know what Pacific Bell is. However, when she was let go, when the breakup happened, she had to seek medical treatment. And I'm mentioning that because many of us become totally engrossed in our roles. And then when those roles disappear, we're not sure who we are and how we measure up. And so I use her as an example that your mental health is so important and that it should not be undervalued, right?
Yes.
Because I was raised in the generation of get a good education and then get a good job, right? Get the education because no one can take that away from you. And so when you then achieve some level of success, and then that somebodyness is taken away, we often don't have the right tools or the community or access those tools to make sure that we maintain our wellness. So I want to leave that as my final point.
Thank you so much. We love you, and I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Melissa Commodore, how you feeling right now? We're going to bring you back for next Tuesday because we're going to go deeper, and we got about 5 other people we're going to bring in at least. We're going to actually have some deeper conversations because, again, the journey that we go on together is that pathway for us to succeed together. Again, your level of success, right? It depends on your level of service and your level of surrender. Thank you for serving us today. Thank you for surrendering for us today. What else would you like to share?
I just want to thank you all because being able to have that support and have people listen and then get the tools that you need to move forward in the right way so that you don't have baggage and that trauma can be healed is very essential, is invaluable. And I'm so appreciative of it. So I just want to encourage people that if you are in a situation and you've done the steps that you need to do, looking inside yourself, assessing the situation, trying to have compassion on the other person, understanding where they're coming from, having those conversations, but you are still being, talked down to, or trauma is still happening, or the toxicity in the workplace is still affecting you negatively, that you would stand up and that it's okay. It's okay to say no to good so you can say yes to great. And so that's what I'm learning. I'm saying no to good so I can say yes to great. So thank you.
Oh, we love you. Melissa Brown, how you doing? How you feeling right
Oh,
now?
I'm doing great. I'm over here saying, "Amen, Dr. Melissa. You said it just right. That's it." Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me, Bernard. Just what a fabulous group. I feel very happy to be a part of this team today. And just my final words would be lean into doing your work. It seems like, toward the end of our conversation, so much talk. You can't do accountability without looking in your own mirror, without being able to take correction and challenge even yourself. And like I said, it's so easy to just kind of layer on the offenses. Um, and you can get into kind of a mood and a disposition. And before you know it, your wounds have become your personality and your whole way of being. And so people, we tend to just look at people on the surface and we make quick judgments. And maybe because this is my area of expertise, a lot of times we meet people who can be kind of nice, nasty, or they got this edge to them. And when really what it is they've been wounded and they have not been processed. And they've just been walking through life. Um, but we have tools now, as has been said. Maybe you couldn't process this 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Maybe there was no space for you to be heard, for your mother to be heard, our aunts, our fathers to be heard when they were disrespected and dismissed. But now, look at this, we have space. And so be willing to come into the space and share yourself, surrender your old story so you can create a new one.
Mm. Y'all, your level of success depends on your level of service and your level of surrender. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. So, the last Thursday of every month and the first Tuesday of every month. Not every month, but most months. So, just click on the link. You can sign up. The link is in the chat. And what we really want is for you to remember the link is as a bit.ly link. It's Achieving Success 2020. For the masterminds, and it's Achieving Success 2020 action for the action and accountability session. So we do hope that you'll join us. We look forward to you being a part of this journey. Again, we're creating a book and a video series from these sessions because we do have answers. We do know what success looks like, but we need for you to come on this journey with us. Your level of success really does depend on your level of service and your level of surrender. Thank you for joining us today. More to come. Thanks.